Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Suzanne Clark, President of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for joining today's virtual conference on equality of opportunity in the innovation economy. Today's event brings together the Chamber's Equality of Opportunity Initiative and our Global Innovation Policy Center. And I really want to thank Rick Wade, who heads the EOI initiative, and David Hirschman, who leads GIPC, for coming together and pulling this off. This afternoon, you're going to hear from leaders in business, in government, and academia as we discuss how to create a more diverse and equitable innovation economy. Much of today's discussion will be about how the innovation economy is extending opportunity and supporting diversity. And the innovation economy should support diversity. But we must recognize that diversity drives innovation, not the other way around. Differing perspectives do in fact lead to differing ideas, and robust debate and discussion leads to more innovation and important breakthroughs. Think back on any meaningful innovation advancements in our country's history. They were the result of looking at a challenge in a new way, and that requires different perspectives. So, when we talk about extending opportunity and bringing more diverse perspectives into the innovation ecosystem, it's not just because it's the right thing to do, it's also good for business. The Chamber has long supported efforts to increase diversity across our economy. We've engaged on these issues for years and have forged close partnerships with the Minority Business Development Agency to support minority-owned businesses, with the W.K. Kellogg Foundation to promote the business case for racial equality, and with historically Black colleges and universities to help foster the next generation of business leadership through our Next Gen internship program. Over the summer, in the most recent step to extend our work on economic opportunity and close race-based opportunity gaps, we launched this Equality of Opportunity initiative. We are focused on our areas of expertise and where we think we can have the greatest impact: education, entrepreneurship, employment, and criminal justice. Closing opportunity gaps in employment and entrepreneurship in the innovation economy is essential to extending the American dream and lifting all communities. Underrepresented individuals who are brought into the innovation ecosystem benefit personally from a good job in an impactful role, but there are compounding benefits as well. Their differing perspectives, as we were saying a second ago, lead to innovative ideas that translate into real-world solutions to improve the lives of those from similar backgrounds and the world around them. We know what a job means to a family. We know what a job means to a community. In the innovation economy, where new ideas literally shape the world around us, it can mean even more. When we elevate diverse voices, it lifts our businesses, our communities, and our country. Thank you for your role and commitment in this critical endeavor, and I hope you enjoy, learn, and contribute to today's program.
You know, since slaves once landed in the British colony of Jamestown, Virginia, back in 1619, a spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship was prevalent in the Black community. During the 19th and 20th centuries, African-American innovators and entrepreneurs were prolific. Recall Thomas Jennings, the first Black patent recipient in 1821 for a dry cleaning process. Elijah McCoy, who obtained 57 patents over his entire lifetime, and Madam C.J. Walker, who revolutionized the haircare industry, and countless other Black innovators and entrepreneurs. But, you know, despite the rich history of Black innovators and entrepreneurs, the economic impact and full potential of African-American ingenuity has yet to be fully embraced and realized. Despite continuous job growth, the Black unemployment rate is nearly twice that of whites. 24% of Black households have a zero net worth. African Americans own only 9% of the country's businesses and occupy just 3.2% of the senior roles at large companies. And yes, there have been historical and structural factors and policies that have contributed to these imbalances. But these facts alone point to the need for a greater focus on growing and strengthening and unlocking the benefits that Black innovators and entrepreneurs can bring to our society. We simply must think bigger and encourage more Black innovators and entrepreneurs to develop high growth, high demand companies and industries like technology and transportation and clean energy. Yeah, targeted government programs help, but strategic private sector investment is also critical. And we need sound policies and initiatives that inspire innovation and invest more in STEM education and that close the workforce skills gap and frees up capital for minority-owned enterprises and help minority businesses access the 95% of customers who reside outside our U.S. borders. I testified before the U.S. House of Representatives Small Business Committee on the importance of participation of minorities in our patent system. That's important. And so, as Suzanne said, at the U.S. Chamber, we're stepping up our efforts to engage business, government, and the broader society about not just the moral imperative for racial equity and equality of opportunity, but the economic case, the business case for more diversity and equality of opportunity. The combination of innovation and entrepreneurship and free enterprise holds unlimited economic possibilities for Black Americans, their families, and their communities, to say nothing about the vast benefits to our overall American economy and society. I'm extremely grateful that you've joined us for this conversation, this important conversation this afternoon on the equality of opportunity in the innovation economy.
Well, hello again, and I'm delighted to start our first interview here with Dr. Michelle McMurry Heath. And I'm not going to read you an introduction, but I'm going to tell you a few really cool things about this really accomplished woman who's in front of you. So first of all, she's a medical doctor. She's a molecular immunologist. I can barely even say that. She's had incredible roles in the private sector at J&J, in the public sector, with the Aspen Institute, and a real leader and thinker in public policy and in everything we're talking about today in terms of the innovation economy. She's currently the president and CEO of BIO, which represents 1,000 life sciences companies and is the largest biotechnology advocacy group. And a really other cool thing about her, I have two more cool things. Actually, I have a lot more cool things. We're just going to say two. One is that she received her MD PhD from Duke's Medical Scientist Training Program and was the first African American to graduate from that prestigious program, which is amazing. And the other thing that's really cool is how much she and I have in common. So first of all, we're both really funny. Second of all, we both spend all of our days doing virtual conferences.
We're getting good at it, Suzanne.
And third of all, we are the two biggest advocates in the United States for getting our only children, our only daughters, back to school because we do not know how to teach physics. So we're just saying it. We're just putting it out there for the audience, aren't we, Dr. McMurry?
New math is the bane of my existence. That's all I can say.
You and your husband are both doctors.
Even as a scientist.
I mean, what's the hope in my house? Anyway, we're really happy to have you here and delighted to start this conversation. And clearly, as I just said, your career has spanned academia and business and government and nonprofits. And I mean, it's amazing you're as young as you are, given how much experience you've had. But you've had a really specific focus, I think, as I read your bio throughout your career, which is on ensuring that more patients from diverse backgrounds can benefit from cutting edge innovation. And so talk to us about how that issue has become a driving force for you.
Well, it's so critically important, not just to myself, but to so many communities that supported me through my training and through my career. And I grew up in a public health family, and so was kind of raised to think about, oh, it's very important for us to figure out how to get medicine to people who need them, how to get care to people who need it. And that's incredibly important. But it's just as important, as I started to learn more about the scientific process, that we are getting the promise of innovation to those patients in need as well. We spend so much time sometimes arguing about access to the medicines that are on our medicine cabinet shelves today, and not enough time talking about how those communities that suffer with illnesses without a cure, or poor access to clean air and clean water, lack of access to nutritious food, they really need the scientific innovations that our businesses are working to develop now. And so we need to be talking about the future and making sure that we're delivering the future in an equitable way as well.
And so, is this why you've said that kind of the distribution of scientific progress is the social justice issue of our age?
It's so critically important. This summer, our country was galvanized around the issue of equality and trying to figure out how we can level the playing field and give every one of our children the great opportunities that they deserve. But if you think about children that are being raised in vulnerable situations and in vulnerable communities, that are coming from underrepresented groups and minorities, they really need the scientific solutions that are in our pipelines more than anyone else. They need freedom from illness, freedom from threats to their nutrition and their way of life, free from the threat of global warming. All of these things are solutions our businesses are developing. And if we don't find an equitable way to give it to them, then we are going to really lock in inequalities for decades to come. So we need to be focused on leveling that scientific playing field as well.
So, this is another thing you and I have in common, right? Is this real commitment to an equality of opportunity of all kinds. So, what role can people and trade associations play in that distribution?
Well, I think we're in a very interesting seat. We get to look across an industry and see how it can really contribute to improving the fate of different communities. And so we can talk about how critical the work that's being conducted in our industries is to the future of our nation and our economy and our health, in our case, but also to express to folks who are out there trying to understand the impact of, in our case, science on their lives, or whatever industry it is you're representing on their lives, explain it to them and make it real to their day-to-day lives. Because our businesses really do hold the promise of the future, and we have so much to contribute.
So, one of the ways that you've made it real is, and thought about this promise and things we have to contribute, is by creating Bio's Equality Agenda. Can you tell our
Mhm.
audience more about that program?
Yes. So we just launched our bioquality agenda almost 2 months ago now. Time has flown. But it has three main pillars. The first, and just as you said in your opening, Suzanne, it's so important for us to figure out where are our areas of expertise. Where can we contribute to a more equal whole without necessarily, trying to boil the ocean, but doing what's in front of us. And I think if we each take a step in the right direction, we will get where we're going so much faster. So for bio, that means one, concentrating on trying to reduce healthcare disparities. And we're doing this by trying to improve the diversity of the clinical trials that our companies are conducting, as well as trying to make sure that as we produce new COVID therapies and vaccines, that we are out there advocating vehemently for access to those vaccines and therapies, because it's going to be so important that everyone recovers from this pandemic and not just a few. The second pillar is really around economic opportunity. So we really want our pipeline to be rich and diverse. And many of our member companies have been investing in diversity and training for decades. I mean, close to 25 years ago now, I was the beneficiary of a United Negro College Fund Merck Fellowship that was so instrumental for my graduate career. And that is just one of a myriad of programs that our companies have been undertaking. And it's not just the big companies. One of our member companies, Biogen in Boston, has trained over 250 African American scientists in the last 10 years. So what the missing link is often following up these great trainees and making sure that all of the companies in the biotech ecosystem have line of sight to that great talent. And so we're building a LinkedIn type atmosphere for all the alumni of those great industry programs so that minority and women scientists and entrepreneurs who've been trained by our member companies will suddenly be easy to find. And companies, no matter where the hiring manager is sitting within a bio member company, they can find that great talent and recruit them in. And then the third pillar is really around something that the Chamber has focused on for years, and that is the power of the purse, the power of our companies to produce economic development. And so we at Bio are trying to help our companies diversify their supply chains to make it easy for them to patronize women-owned and minority-owned businesses and businesses that really take diversity quite seriously. And then finally, entrepreneurship. We have programs like the National Institutes of Health Small Business Innovation Program, grant program, that really allows scientists who may have been trained in academia but have a great idea for a company, start those companies. And it's important that those scientists are diverse as well.
Okay, now I have 100 questions I want to ask you. I can get them all out here. We're going to hijack the whole program. Rick won't mind. One of the things that you just said that I find really interesting is kind of the educational pipeline. You talked a little bit about your grant and what that did for you in graduate school, but it's something we've been thinking a lot about at the Chamber, which is education and what these pipelines kind of look like. And so what are your thoughts about how business can really work with industry to get more students interested in careers and pathways that will lead them to be part of the innovation ecosystem?
It's so funny because I was just asked a question earlier today on a podcast. What would be my dream of the one thing that we would change in our nation? And I said, have every high school student in the nation take a biotechnology entrepreneurship class. Now that's very self-serving because that's my field, and I think it's very, very important. But I think we don't get as involved as we possibly should in the educational process. It's often, and if you didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial family, it may be relatively late in your training and in your career before you're exposed to the power of our companies and what good our companies produce and how they're changing the world. And perhaps they're the best lever to change the world. And so I want our up and coming scientists and budding entrepreneurs to have access to that point of view as early as possible.
So if you were able to look into the camera and talk to a veteran or a person of color or a woman and say, if you have an idea, if you're feeling innovative or entrepreneurial, here's how you could engage with our industry, what advice would you offer?
Well, I would say definitely try to partake of all of the great democratization of our conferences that are happening right now. You and I have had this conversation about how the conference settings and world has had to change in recent months. And I think some of those changes are going to be lasting. And the amazing thing about it is it's allowing students and up and comers and folks that are maybe outside of an industry but curious about it to drop in and get new points of view and new education about what an industry is about. And so that's a great opportunity. But I'd also say, don't give up. Learn about the grant programs like NIH's Small Business Innovation Grant Program and the great pitch sessions that are offered by innovative companies across our country and across the world, and really take part. It sometimes takes a little while to find that mentorship, but mentorship is key and it's important. And if you are driven by innovation, if you're committed to your idea, I do think you'll find support for it. And now is a great time to really be starting in this sort of field, in this sort of endeavor. We are seeing more investment in biotechnology companies in the first half of 2020 than we saw in all of 2019. So while this has been a tough economic year for many industries, this time is really telling our investors and the broader public that science is going to be an integral part of our future. So there's no better time to invest in a scientific business.
It's so interesting that you used that language. I was interviewing Dr. Fauci, and he said science will lead the way. There's a bright road ahead, and science will lead the way, which I just loved. When you think about, we're talking about entrepreneurs, and you and I have had this conversation before about particularly when you're first in family to go to college, you really want a secure job, a secure brand, and you're thinking about your financial security. And entrepreneurship seems hard, or can seem hard or daunting. The other side of your industry is, of course, scientists, right? And some of these scientists work for the government or for large companies that might ensure more security or feel like they're going to be more secure. And so, my question to you is, are you seeing more diversity now in the science community than you were 20 years ago?
Well, it's certainly improving, not fast enough, but it is improving. And I do think you're right. Our larger companies, our academic institutions, our government agencies, they do provide a defined path in some cases, and that can be reassuring to many. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think they're great training grounds. They give great perspectives on what's needed in our industry and outside of our industry. So those are great places to contribute. But don't give up on your entrepreneurial dreams as well, because, it's so interesting. When I was growing up in Oakland, California, it was such a fabric of the African American community to think about how you give back to the broader community, how you can bring others along as you're progressing. And I think entrepreneurs can do more for their home communities and for the people around them than perhaps any other segment of our economy. So do it not just for yourself, but do it for the others you will employ and the others you will inspire.
I think that's such an important message. I think we're going to have to use those quotes and get them out. Dr. Frederick at Howard University and I talk about this all the time. It's just, how do we lift people up and inspire them about the good they can do through entrepreneurship, the job creation, the community support, the philanthropy, not to mention innovation that you can create that literally saves lives, right? So one of the things we also talk a lot about at the Chamber is that the innovation ecosystem also requires some strong intellectual property protection, right? Because you got to make sure that the people doing this inventing end up getting a fair return for it, so that the next generation continues to be inspired to innovate in that way. And so how important is it, do you think, that people who want to get involved in the innovation ecosystem are aware of some of the IP challenges?
It's critically important. I mean, an idea without protection is not valuable. And you don't have the opportunity to attract the investment and attract the support that you need to be able to turn your idea into a concrete solution that helps patients in our case, or that helps consumers. And so you must make yourself informed and aware about intellectual property. And that also takes confidence in your ideas. And having that chutzpah to say, I have something new and something valuable to contribute, and it's worth protecting. And it is my intellectual capital. And I have no doubt that we have such great minds in all of our various diverse communities that have great things to contribute.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. We interviewed Jean Case this week, and she said, no one's going to have more faith in you than you have in yourself, right? And so once you muster that faith in yourself and you go out and you conquer the world, your ideas deserve to be protected. You took that risk, right? So I'm so sad that our panel is ending, because I so enjoy talking to you every chance that I get. I learn.
I know, it's great to talk with you, Suzanne.
So let me just ask you one last question, if I might, Michelle, and it is, what makes you optimistic? At this stage of your career, with all of your accomplishments in your education, if you think about the future of innovation and how it relates to us working together on expanding equality of opportunity, what makes you optimistic?
What makes me optimistic is the next generation. We started this time talking about our kids, and I have an 8-year-old daughter, and seeing how she and her classmates don't see race, don't see gender, don't see limitations in the same way that my cohort did when I was coming up is inspiring. And so all we have to do is water those great seeds in that soil, because they will shoot up and assure our future. So they are really our hope for tomorrow.
I couldn't agree more. And listen, God bless her and you and the important work of all of those bio companies. We're all counting on them. I think science does lead the way, and you appear to be leading science. So you go get them, and we're right behind you anytime. Thank you for today.
Thank you, Suzanne. We'll have to have you over at our virtual house next time.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye.
I'm David Hirschman, Executive Vice President of the Chamber and President and CEO of the Global Innovation Policy Center. The United States benefits from having the strongest intellectual property system in the world, and no one understands the importance of sustaining that more than our keynote speaker today, the Undersecretary of Commerce for Intellectual Property and Director of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, Andrei Iancu. Under his tenure, PTO has both improved the quality of the patents it issues and reduced patent uncertainty. It has strengthened and modernized the patent system. And Andrei Iancu himself has traveled the country to explain to new audiences the benefits of the intellectual property system to the American economy. So it really shouldn't surprise us that he understands that the patent system can and must play a very important role in addressing the inequality of economic opportunity that persists in our nation. He has backed that up by creating a new National Council for Expanding Innovation that will bring to life the words he said when he said, we need to make sure our IP system is demographically, geographically, and economically diverse. We need to encourage and support women, people of color, and low-income people to invent, patent, and succeed. The National Council for Expanding Innovation includes a broad group of C-suite executives, academics, professionals, associations, and government thought leaders. It is a great initiative, and it will help ensure that our patent system benefits an even broader array of Americans and plays an even more important role in driving our economic prosperity coming out of this crisis. Director Iancu, thank you very much for joining us today, and we look forward to your remarks.
Thank you, David, for that kind introduction and for inviting me to speak at this timely and important conference. A big thank you also to Frank Cullen, who helped to organize this event. At the USPTO, we are proud of the close partnership we have with the U.S. Chamber and its members. The Chamber has been a strong advocate for business innovation and entrepreneurship, and I look forward to our continued work together, especially as we work to expand opportunities in innovation for all Americans. Today's conference comes just 2 weeks after we launched the National Council for Expanding American Innovation. This historic initiative resulted from the USPTO's work on the 2018 Success Act report, which found that women and minorities are underrepresented as inventors named on US granted patents. In that report, we recommended the creation of a high-level council of industry, academic, and government leaders to help craft a national strategy for increasing participation of underrepresented groups in US innovation. This is precisely what we are now implementing. Our country needs more innovators, more entrepreneurs, and many more innovation leaders. The creation of the new Council for Expanding American Innovation is one of the most important initiatives the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office has undertaken in the last 30 years. And we have been extremely pleased by the overwhelming response to its September launch. I was truly inspired by the earnest and enthusiastic discussions that took place during that inaugural meeting. You can learn more about visiting our National Council website at uspto.gov, Expanding American Innovation. The bottom line is this: in today's highly competitive global economy, it's critical that all Americans willing to work hard, persevere, and take risks have the opportunity to innovate, to start new companies, to succeed in established companies, and ultimately to achieve the American dream. To that end, we must expand the innovation ecosystem demographically, economically, and geographically. Demographically, we know from the USPTO's recent Progress and Potential report that women make up only 13% of inventors named on US patents. The numbers are improving, but there is so much more that needs to be done. Likewise, the engagement of minorities in the American innovation enterprise is not where it needs to be, and by an even greater margin. Moreover, individuals in economically disadvantaged areas are also underrepresented in the innovation economy. And geographically, those located far from the country's major technology hubs are also not participating nearly to the same extent. All of this must change. Innovation is driving every aspect of the economy and our lives. And it is innovation that will solve the major problems confronting humanity, including eradication of the coronavirus. Innovation can be the great equalizer. With broader opportunities in the innovation ecosystem, more Americans can partake of its great benefits. Recent studies show that by harnessing the creative talent of all Americans, we could quadruple the number of inventors and increase the overall level of US GDP per capita by up to 4.4%. Innovation can also be the great unifier. It's part of the American character, and we can all get behind it once again. Just as we did in the 19th century with the American invention of the telegraph, electricity, and telephone. And just as we did in the 20th century with the American invention of the airplane, internet, biotechnology, GPS, and so much more. Innovation can bring us together, and we can all get behind it, as we did when the United States put men on the moon some 50 years ago. We're a nation of risk takers and problem solvers. We're a people whose curiosity, imagination, and productive perseverance have changed the world. We can all get behind innovation once again. I'm asking all of you to join me in this effort. A national call to promote innovation everywhere and with everyone. Quite simply, in this hyper-competitive global economy, we need all hands on deck. Our country has taken on great challenges in the past, and we can do it again. But we need your help. We need you to help inspire all Americans from all walks of life and from across the entire land to participate in our innovation ecosystem. We need you to help mentor the next generation and encourage them to unleash their creative talents. And we need your help to find and promote role models that the next generation can identify with and can look up to. One such remarkable role model is joining us today, Dr. Marianne Rogers-Croke. Dr. Croke's groundbreaking work in voice-over IP technology has been instrumental in allowing us to stay connected these past months, and frankly, for a long time prior. In fact, Dr. Croke has received or applied for more than 100 patents on voice-over IP technology and allowing sound to transmit as data over optical and cellular networks. Her innovations make online conferences such as this possible. Dr. Croke also invented a text-to-donate technology after Hurricane Katrina, allowing Americans to donate to charitable organizations by typing a simple text. She has spent more than 3 decades developing advanced technologies for voice and data networks and the internet. All in all, she holds more than 200 patents across various technologies. We are honored to recognize her contributions to American society and to the world. In all of my conversations with inventors and innovators, I have been struck by one recurring theme. When asked where they found their inspiration, their answer is strikingly similar: a parent, a teacher, a mentor. It was someone who believed in them, who gave them a nudge and told them that they can do it. The impact of a mentor cannot be overstated. As Dr. Croke recently shared, the more role models that people have, the more inspired they are to understand that they are capable of doing anything. Dr. Croke is that role model to countless individuals who look to her as an example of making the impossible possible. She is a visionary who makes the unknown real, and she helps others visualize and realize their own dreams. In recognition of the achievements she has made as an innovator and as a role model for the next generation of inventors, I am proud to announce that we are adding Dr. Marianne Rogers-Croke to our USPTO Inventor Trading Card Series. These cards recognize a wide variety of patent holders from many diverse backgrounds. They are distributed by the USPTO to students, teachers, and parents at education and outreach events throughout the country. I'm pleased to note that they have become extremely popular and collectible. They are introducing future inventors to the vast array of technologies that are available to them to pursue, and to those current and past inventors who inspire them to do so. We are excited to add Dr. Croke to this illustrious group of inventors. We will be hearing from Dr. Croke momentarily, but first, it's with great pleasure that I now unveil Dr. Marianne Rogers-Croke's Inventor Card.
Thank you, Director Youngku. I am thrilled to be here, although virtually, with all of you today. I feel deeply honored by being represented on an inventor trading card. I think it's really important that students understand that inventors are people just like themselves. The card makes that reality so tangible and visible. I think it's just brilliant. I also believe that the card and so much of the work that I see this team doing will stimulate students to develop their own sense of curiosity and creativity. And that's really where the journey begins. You know, they can then start exploring what they can do to change the world around them through invention. I often get the opportunity to talk to students, and I just see their faces light up when they begin to understand that many of the problems that the world faces, the most daunting, challenging ones, may be resolved through inventions that they can create. They are so hungry for information and education about invention. They're also delighted to learn that there's no one path to invention, that the creativity that is often required for invention can begin by just exposing yourself to a diversity of experiences, different cultures, different languages, different perspectives, and all the various forms of science and arts. Those all can be the pathway to that spark that causes you to see the world in a completely different way. They're also quite interested to learn that they can not only improve and make the world better through invention, but they can also enrich their own careers and pathways to success. I'm very inspired by the work the organization is doing, and I would just ask you to please continue the work that is outlined in the success report and continue to encourage all of us in education, industry, government, and even parents to work collectively to help students understand that invention may be the key to making the world a better place. So thank you again. I deeply appreciate this honor.
Thank you for those words, Marianne. You inspire all of us with your perseverance, passion, and vision. I'm excited that so many of our school children and young adults will be able to collect your card, read about your accomplishments, and be inspired by your example. And to all of you watching this program, we're asking you to help us spread the word about Dr. Croak and make sure boys and girls and young adults across America know her name and her amazing work. And help us spread the word about all of our great inventors. Requests for our inventor trading cards can be sent to education@uspto.gov, or you can download them from the kids pages of our website. I also invite you to visit our website at uspto.gov and read our Journeys of Innovation articles every month with inspiring stories about inspiring inventors. This month, we are featuring Dr. Croak. Please also check our website for information about our upcoming speaker series with Dr. Croak, where I will have the privilege to engage with her in a one-on-one discussion. Again, thank you to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to be with you today and for allowing me to showcase the incredible contributions of one of our most remarkable innovators. And thank you all for the important work you do every day for innovation and the American economy.
Wow, wow, wow. I hope that all of you have been as inspired as I have by this forum so thus far. And just a huge congratulations to Dr. Croak for her inventor's card. And we were so thrilled to have the undersecretary with us today. This is a panel, a forum here on the role of business, open for opportunity. And, you know, I'm excited to get right in here. So why don't we do that? And let me first just introduce our distinguished panel. We're thrilled to have with us today Corville Allen, who is a senior technical staff member and master inventor at IBM. Laura Self, Senior Vice President and Counsel of Governmental Affairs at Qualcomm, and John Miller, MD, JD, Corporate Counsel at Pfizer. Laura, let me start with you, please. Tell us more about Qualcomm and your role.
Sure. Qualcomm is the world's leading developer of advanced cellular communications and technologies. We are creating the foundational technology that will become the underpinning of everything 5G, and that's been our role throughout our history to invent the technologies that drive each generation of mobile communications. And mobile has become the most successful technological platform in history, in part because of our incredible engineers who have created that foundational technology, and just, thrilled to be at today's event. Diversity and inclusivity among our engineers is critical to our success as a company. And so we place a high priority on these issues within the company, but also work with others throughout the country to try to ensure that we have a inclusive, vibrant patent system that's accessible to all individuals in this country, women, minorities, low-income individuals, veterans, and so forth. So thrilled to be here.
Well, thank you. I want to come back to you because I know you've done some amazing work in the area of disparity in women, in particular, on some research and data that we want to share with our viewers here. Corville, I got to tell you, man, Master Inventor is a pretty cool title. And I want that title one day. I'm putting that on my bucket list. About your role and how in the world do you become a Master Inventor?
Thank you. My role is architect in IBM Watson Health, and becoming a Master Inventor is really an item where, depending on what you work on in IBM, you have the opportunity to work on innovative technology across the spectrum. And for me, I worked on e-commerce, business process management, and in the healthcare and life sciences space to bring cognitive technology and AI to that space. And during that time, I've worked with some brilliant people, worked on some great innovative solutions. And as I work on them, we start to file patents, and developing those patents out of the ideas that we build. After a period of time, you recognize that you have the talent to build innovative solutions. You've gotten a portfolio of at least 20 or so patents. And then there's a designation in IBM where you go through a process to be nominated and become a Master Inventor. So that's kind of the process.
Well, I got to ask, because it was referenced earlier, which I thought was really interesting, the inspiration. Who inspired you? Where did the inspiration come for you on this trajectory that's led you to become a Master Inventor? Where did it start?
I think once I joined IBM, after I did a couple startups right out of college, it's in our DNA at IBM, and that culture of innovation and being able to work on important technology, you see it around you. And there is a built-in process that encourages everyone in IBM to participate. Very inclusive, very diverse from all backgrounds. And as you work on the solutions, you're working with different people. And because that is there in the culture, we're always striving to look at what we've done. Is this valuable? And if it's valuable, we should protect it, right? We should file a patent. So that's kind of the thought around the culture that drives it and the inspiration as I look across others who are Master Inventor. It's the same way that you just said, right? That title is cool, and I want to be a Master Inventor. So that's how that happened for me.
Well, I really would love it if you can give me an honorary title of Master Inventor. So, John, I'm a little biased. My first entry into corporate America was with the pharma company. So I'm thrilled that you've joined us, representing Pfizer. Talk to us about how you pursued your career. How do you get going, and a bit about your role at Pfizer?
Sure. So during my pre-medical education, I always envisioned a career in orthopedic surgery, taking care of athletes. And until I got in med school and I was exposed to alternative careers in the healthcare field, and I kind of discovered my passion for business and for law and for intellectual property in particular. So within Pfizer, when I first joined the company, I worked with a lot of inventors. We don't have the title of master inventor at Pfizer, but I think I'm going to bring that back to our company as a suggestion. But I was working with inventors and to help them obtain intellectual property protection for our inventions. And currently, I've transitioned into a role where I work in intellectual property policy space, where I work with cross-functional teams across our business to advance Pfizer's policy interests globally.
Good. I got to ask you this, and it may not be exactly in your domain, but, we're watching all the impact of COVID-19, the disproportionate impact on communities of color, and yet the importance of clinical trials and vaccines and therapies that are being developed. These are innovations that are coming from our pharmaceutical industry. Any thoughts on diversity of participation and any insights on what Pfizer is doing to ensure this really important process is diverse and inclusive?
Yes, we know that COVID-19 disproportionately affects minority communities, and we know that they have higher infection rates, higher mortality, more severe disease. And we also know that we need to have kind of proportional representation in the clinical trials so that we can ensure those who have the highest risk have the opportunity to participate in the studies for our vaccine. We want the clinical trial populations to represent the clinical populations that our drugs and vaccines will see in clinical practice. So within Pfizer, and this was an initiative of diversity in clinical trials was an initiative before the COVID-19 pandemic, but this has only been enhanced by the level to which we've seen the disproportionate effects of COVID-19 in minority patient populations. But we've kind of identified the issues that we think were hindering minority involvement in our clinical trials. And one of the major things we identified was trust. Another thing is access to healthcare and financial issues as well. So what we've been doing is working with trusted partners to reach out to the affected communities. We've been doing things on social media, doing commercials and outreach in that aspect, and also just listening to those communities about what their needs are and being responsive so that we can include them in our studies.
Thank you so much. This is so incredibly important, and thank you for your work as an industry. Laura, let me come back to you because what we do know, and we understand the moral case for diversity, the moral imperative, and there's been a lot of research about why diversity matters. It's certainly organizations that are more diverse and inclusive are more profitable. You've been doing a lot of work on this disparity with regards to women and patent holders, and share some insights and thoughts and what you found, and how do we kind of close these gaps?
Yeah, so I would just start with what you've just said. This is diversity. Of course, it's a core value, but it's also an economic and an innovation imperative, and that's true for Qualcomm. We live or die on the strength of our invention and our R&D, and if we're not bringing all of our talent to the table and creating not just a diverse environment, but an inclusive environment where everybody's participating in our invention process, then we're not going to be as successful as we possibly can be. So diversity is critical to the success of a company like ours, and diversity in the patent system is critical to the success of companies like ours. But importantly, we know that patents are an incredible enabler of economic opportunity, access to venture capital, obviously professional advancement. And we know that our startup community, our system of entrepreneurship and independent invention is critical to the success of our country. So one of the issues we looked at a number of years ago was what is the diversity gap, if you will, in our patent system. And we found a profound gap, which is not surprising. You know, we see diversity gaps across all spectrums of economic activity, and unfortunately, the patent system is no exception. So for women, for example, only 13% of named inventors on patents are women. This is something that the PTO found in its study, and we've confirmed that through additional research. And we also see diversity gaps across race, across income issues. So, for example, if you're the top 1% of income levels, your children are 10 times more likely to patent than other socioeconomic groups in our country. So the diversity divide, if you will, exists across every aspect of our society and economy. And that has profound implications, not only in terms of creating economic opportunity for underserved groups, but ensuring that our country is reaping the full benefits of our innovative and creative capacity as a country. And again, mentioning COVID, you know, with every challenge we face as a nation, it's imperative that we're bringing our full community to the table and creating those opportunities to not only have the best minds solving various problems, but even identifying problems that need to be solved. One of the things you find with once you include women and other groups into the patent invention ecosystem, you realize that women and other underrepresented groups recognize problems that need to be solved that have been historically ignored by you know, the white men, candidly, who have dominated our invention ecosystem for so long. So there are a host of benefits that derive from a more inclusive, diversive invention system, patent system, and it's again, it's really important and welcome that we're seeing the USPTO, the Chamber, and so many other organizations recognizing the need to address this problem.
Yeah, thank you so much. You know, Corbo and John, you know, we've developed a really fascinating partnership. I'm sure that your companies have with historically Black colleges called the Next Gen Business Partnership. It really is about inspiring the next generation of not only Black, but other minority innovators and entrepreneurs, and not limited to HBCUs, but across America. But, you know, from your perspective at IBM, what can you share based on your experiences, any insights on, you know, how do we inspire more investment in STEM and trajectories like yours to become a master innovator? I mean, any thoughts from your experiences in creating sort of this connective tissue to these young people to grow up to become like you and to be like Dr. Croak, who we heard from earlier?
Yeah, I think it's inspiring these young minds, creative minds, right? One of the programs that IBM has, and other organizations is participating in it, is the P-TECH program, where high schoolers can get an associate's degree, get internships within 6 years at no cost, and they're driving the STEM activities there. The other thing is really volunteering in that space and encouraging these kids. Earlier in the spring, I was a Shark Tank reviewer for the P-TECH school in Syracuse. And the students there just came up with great ideas, good thought processes. And I was amazed at how they were articulate, what they came up with. One came up with a stylus. I won't share the idea anymore, but I was just impressed with how they are. So the talent, the passion is there, and it's for us to support them, both business and individuals, by volunteering our time and being that mentor to them throughout all phases. So not just at P-TECH, but anywhere else in our organization. For me, I ran the Master Inventor program for Watson Health this year. And, you know, as part of that, we're looking across all spectrums of underrepresented groups and making sure that they have the opportunity to realize that and build a pipeline, right? It takes several years to become a master inventor through effort and task. and the multiple initiatives within IBM to recognize and address the same thing that Laura just spoke about, to drive that more invention, more diversity, and more diversity of thoughts in the invention, right? When I get together with my invention groups, I always want diversity of thought, diversity of talent, and a disparate views when we come up with the ideas, the challenges, and how we solve them.
Good. Thank you. John, tell us about Pfizer. I mean, I know you're leading a lot of the work at Pfizer around diversity and what we, again, are calling equality of opportunity. And we'd like to learn, because I think we're also trying to share best practices through these forums and conversations. So talk about what Pfizer's doing.
Yeah, so within the legal division, we've created, we're calling it a Development and Equity Committee, which has been put in place to drive strategic plan over the next few years. We have short-term and longer-term goals that focus on internal and external initiatives. And really the vision of this Development and Equity Committee is that each colleague within the legal division it takes an initiative to foster an environment where there's a culture of diversity, inclusion, and equity, where all the colleagues feel included and are treated equitably and can contribute fully and have opportunities to develop professionally. Some of the programs that we put in place so far is there's a diverse colleague mentoring program, where it's more of a bespoke program where you match diverse colleagues to mentors who have particular skills or particular experiences that can help that diverse colleague continue to develop. We've also joined the Mansfield Rule Legal Department Initiative, where we've made a commitment that 50% of the candidates considered for internal and external hires will be, women, people of color, LGBTQ plus individuals, or individuals with disabilities. And the goal there is to have a diverse and inclusive workforce and a pipeline of talent to increase the diversity and inclusion within our company. And then at outside of the legal division and at an enterprise-wide level, there's a goal that we will achieve parity at the vice president and above level for minorities, where we would increase the representation from where it currently is to up to about 32%, and also doubling the amount of underrepresented minorities in these levels as well.
Well, that's outstanding. You touched on something, and Laura, I'd like to get your thoughts. John mentioned leadership. How much does leadership matter at the top of an organization as we think about expanding equality of opportunity and diversity within corporate organizations? Because I know you guys have been a leader, in particular, again, in the area of women and other minorities as well.
Oh, it's critical. I mean, it really is essential. And, the fact that promoting inclusivity and diversity generally within Qualcomm is such a priority for our leadership, and also promoting diversity or promoting inclusivity in terms of encouraging our female inventors to patent. That's been an important priority for our leadership as well. It's also been critically important in supporting our ability to start programs that really are about addressing the patent diversity gap and the STEM diversity gap externally. So we've taken a look at, the sort of continuum of activity that occurs from early childhood education to university education to potentially, creating a startup to gaining a professional opportunity in a STEM-related field, and sort of looked at how different barriers at each of those stages, through that pathway from childhood to potential patenting, how we can address those barriers as a company. So we have a Think a Bit lab, for example, that's all about creating exposure to invention and patenting for students, and we've reached about 78,000 students through our Think a Bit program. We fund venture capital related activities that are about providing access to capital for female-founded startups and other diverse startups. We work closely with our university community to expose university students to invention and patenting, and to create opportunities for venture capital funding. And then most recently, we've started a campaign called Invent Together, which is really about creating a social media platform and an educational platform for all the different groups throughout the country that are focused on this issue. And that's one of the really important roles that Qualcomm has played, not only in terms of encouraging research and public policy that brings awareness and action to these issues, but acting as a kind of convener and catalyst for all the different groups that are involved in different dimensions of this issue, and really trying to create momentum for positive action to ensure that we're focusing on best practices that really do achieve positive gains in terms of narrowing the various diversity gaps that we see. So the fact that we're able to do all of that, in addition to everything else we do as an engineering company, is a direct result of the importance that our executives and our board place on these issues.
I think as we wrap up here, and I could do this all day, guys, I am really intrigued. I believe in the power of innovation to solve complex problems confronting our society. And I think business plays a very important role. Now, this is what I call my own little quick lightning rod round. And it's a very simple question, no preparation needed. But I do want to ask, Suzanne asked earlier, what are you optimistic about? My question to each of you, give us one thing that we don't know about you, that where you have fun, a movie you've been watching, a series, or activity you're doing during these really challenging times. You're our innovator, so we know you got some good stuff there. So Corville, give me just one thing that you do to have fun, enjoy yourself, to relax during these very difficult and challenging times.
So the one thing I do right now is I play a little bit of Madden, NFL, to relax when I get the chance. So that's my little fun thing right now.
We'll take that. Thank you. John.
A challenge that I'm sure many of us have faced during these past few months is keeping our children active, occupied, not bored. And I started having them paint in color, and then that turned into them having me paint in color with them. So now we have competitions to see who's the best artist in the family, and I lose most of the time.
Laura, how about you?
That's fantastic. I wish I could get my kids to do that. So my daughter and I have started a nightly tradition that we call our music marathon, where we each trade off playing favorite songs for each other. And it's been a way for me to introduce my daughter, who's 12, to the, favorite songs throughout my life. So it's been, for me, a fun opportunity to kind of think back to what was I listening to in high school and college, and so forth. So that's been, and it's also really fun to find out what she's listening to. Surprisingly, disco is big among 12-year-olds. So,
wow.
That's been, yes.
Well, that's a term I haven't heard in a long time.
I know. She was playing me the Bee Gees the other night. So
I love it.
There you go.
And I got to put a record to just say that my outlet has been learning to cook. And growing up in South Carolina, I will tell you, I have the evidence, if you could see below my shoulders, this extra weight. So I've been cooking and eating a lot. Listen, I want to say thank you to all of you for participating in this conversation on the role of business. Innovation, entrepreneurship, so critical in creating equality of opportunity across our country. All of the work that you do each day, we so appreciate, and we look forward to working with you in the days, months, and years to come. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Frank Cullen with the Global Innovation Policy Center at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. At GIPC, we understand the important role innovation plays in driving our economy and improving people's lives. Today, we're joined by a very special guest. We'll talk a little bit about his experience working in the innovation economy and also about some of the challenges that we're faced in terms of bringing more diverse and new voices into this ecosystem, something that's tremendously important for not only our economy, but also for the creativity and innovation that drives the engine of our economy. So I'm joined today by Dr. Willie E. May. He serves as Vice President for Research and Economic Development at Morgan State University. He previously served as U.S. Undersecretary of Commerce for Standards and Technology and was NIST Director, as well as holding senior leadership positions at the University of Maryland. And he has contributed to over 90 peer-reviewed publications and delivered more than 300 invited lectures globally. He was VP of the International Committee on Weights and Measures and serves on advisory boards for the UK National Physical Laboratory, China's National Institute of Metrology, and the Board of Directors for Consumer Reports. Notable honors include an honorary doctorate from Wake Forest and University of Alabama, Huntsville, American Chemical Society's Distinguished Service in the Advancement of Analytical Chemistry, and Career Public Service Awards, including the Percy Julian and Henry Hill Awards. He was recognized in 2015 as the federal government's top chemist by C&E News Magazine and Laboratory Director of the Year by the Federal Laboratory Consortium. As you can see, Dr. May has a very impressive background, and we're certainly delighted that he is here to share his perspectives with us today. Dr. May, let's go ahead and get started. It's really an honor to be with you today, sir. I want to thank you for taking time to be part of this important conference. You've accomplished a great deal in a number of significant roles. Can you share a little bit about your career and your personal journey? It's interesting that we know that there are many gaps in terms of STEM fields, and you were able to climb your way all the way to a PhD in chemistry, and of course, achieve the great success that I've just referenced during my introduction. Can you tell us a little bit about how all of that contributed to your successful career and also led you to your position at Morgan State University?
Sure. First of all, I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama in the late 50s and early 60s, and that was in the midst of the civil rights movement. I attended segregated schools in Birmingham, Alabama, and at that point, my ambition was just to get out of Birmingham and not work in the steel mills and coal mines. I saw on TV these guys working in laboratories wearing white lab coats. So that's what I wanted to do. After graduating from high school, and I will admit, I have to say that I had excellent teachers. I never felt that I was underprepared any place that I've been. The people who were teaching me there then were the cream of the crop because they did not have opportunities like I've had. So they taught and they tried to prepare us for a future that was out there, and they didn't know what it would be, but they were going to make sure that we were prepared. I went from Parker High School in Birmingham, Alabama, where, by the way, my high school principal was Colin Powell's father-in-law. I went on to Knoxville College. That was a perfect setting for me also, small liberal arts college in Knoxville, Tennessee, about 1,000 students. The faculty was about 50-50, 50% white, 50% black. And that was the first environment that was racially non-confrontational for me. It was the perfect environment. And if I had gone to Howard University here in Washington, where I had intended to go, I have no doubt that I would have probably just flunked out. I would have got to the big city, had to party. There wasn't a whole lot to do there in Knoxville. So I committed, and I had teachers who really believed and invested in me. After graduating from Knoxville and having fellowship offers to Harvard and to University of Tennessee and the University of Illinois. I took none of the three because I had a draft letter, and I instead went and worked for the Oak Ridge Gaseous Diffusion Plant, where I got a draft deferment, as it turned out, and I stayed there 3.5 years, and that's really where I grew up. Things were not as I sort of envisioned for me there, and I left after 3.5 years and went to the National Bureau of Standards, which is now called NIST, and there I found the perfect environment for me. Now, there were not a lot of people that looked like me there, but what I found there is a total meritocracy. So I started there as a 1-year temporary, and 45.5 years later, I retired as the, as you said, Undersecretary of Commerce for Standards and Technology and NIST Director. After leaving NIST, I went to my alma mater, the University of Maryland, College Park, and spent a year and a few months. And while there, I had a calling to go to an HBCU. It's something my mother always, we had lots of conversation. And my mother was the most important person in my life. And we would have conversations, and I would tell her about all the great things that scientists at NIST were doing. And she would say, son, that's great. But tell me about what some colored people are doing. And that stuck with me. And as I was sitting there at College Park, I had an opportunity to go to Morgan State University, and I jumped at it because it fulfilled me, and it would have been what my mother thought I should do. Because she would always tell me, I would talk about how lucky I had been in my career, and she would tell me, no, boy, you've been blessed.
Dr. May, Morgan State University is an urban research institution located in Baltimore, Maryland, as you, of course, well know. What are some of the unique challenges at the university level in terms of research and development and advancing your innovation agenda?
Let me speak about HBCUs in general, especially the public ones. We have a responsibility of providing educational opportunities for the underserved. We have to take kids from where they are and have them leave our institutions and become contributors and leaders on the world stage. The R&D that we do at HBCUs provides experiential learning opportunities for our students. This obviously provides them with future employment opportunities, but increasingly teaches them to become more involved in innovation and entrepreneurship. Our job is to prepare them to grow the future and convince them that they are capable of leading the world. But there's a large gap, and it's growing, between the funding that HBCUs get versus majority institutions. And that's a pity. As a nation, we've seen our leadership position in R&D that we once took for granted being eroding. Back in 1957, after the launch of Sputnik, our government invested in establishing within the U.S. the greatest university system, research university system on the face of the earth. Many of the foreign students who came here found this a great environment, and they were staying. But here lately, they're coming and being educated, and they're going home. And we are losing our competitive edge to Asia very, very rapidly. There is great talent in the HBCUs that we are not exploiting. But if you take a look at the higher education research data from 2018 to 2010, you find that there's been a 30% increase in R&D expenditures in the university systems as a whole. But in HBCUs, there's been an 8% decrease. And I can give you more and more statistics, but I'll just say the rich are getting richer and HBCUs are getting poorer. And that's, as I said, a shame, because that's our secret sauce. If we invest in HBCUs, we can make up for that loss we're having with foreigners going home after we educate them here. HBCUs enroll low income, first generation, and sometimes underprepared students. But we do that high touch thing with them, and we have them, as I said earlier, prepared to compete on the world stage after they leave us. We confer about 40% of STEM degrees are conferred to HBCU, to African Americans. HBCUs make up just 3% of US colleges and universities, yet we award 27% of the bachelor's degrees to Black students in the STEM fields. More than 1/3 of Blacks who receive a STEM PhD earn their undergraduate degrees at an HBCU. Actually investing and preparing these high potential students are actually, as I said, our country's secret sauce.
Well, I think you raise a very important issue, Doctor. As we all know, STEM plays a critical role in preparing students to enter into the highly competitive, innovative ecosystem. And we want to commend you for the great work you're doing at Morgan. So perhaps I could ask you to share a bit more information about the innovation agenda at Morgan State University and the Tech Transfer Office, which you lead.
First of all, our president, David Wilson, saw fit about 4 years ago to start a tech transfer office at Morgan State University. And we went out and got a very seasoned professional, Mr. Wayne Swan, would actually start the tech transfer office at the University of Maryland, College Park. And then he had moved on to the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory. And then he came to work with Morgan. And he was truly a godsend. Morgan has, and I'm going to look at my notes this time where I don't misquote them, over the last 10 years, there have been 108 intellectual property disclosures submitted. That was only one prior to 2011. 85 of those 108 intellectual property disclosures have come in the last 5 years. We have 19 patents that are pending. There have been 6 startup companies that have been formed by local entrepreneurs based on Morgan innovations, all within the last 5 years. If you were to look at Morgan's tech transfer output when it comes to intellectual property disclosures, patents, licensing, and so forth, and then you would normalize that by research expenditures, Morgan would be in the top 5 in both intellectual property disclosures and patents applications filed. So we are poised to do great things. We would just like to have the opportunity to have a greater investment by both federal government, and we're working on that, and also by the private sector. We think we have some magic going on, and we would like to use that to the benefit of this country.
Well, thank you for that. And the Chamber certainly believes that this is a collaboration and the industry has a role to play. You've been active with our Next Gen Business Partnership, which really looks to strengthen the relationship between the business community and the HBCUs. And along with other partners such as the government, corporations that are interested in doing, supporting research foundations or various other research initiatives, this work is tremendously important to strengthen those ties. Can you talk a little bit about what that means to the HBCU community and also to those who benefit from the programs made available through those institutions?
Well, we certainly applaud this program and looking forward to even get more involved. The biggest thing this can do for Morgan and schools like Morgan, other HBCUs, is sort of, I think we are hidden secret, and it will expose us, allow us to expose ourselves to the business community and give additional exposure for our professors, our faculty, but also our students. So we're looking forward to working with the Chamber to build out this program.
Well, I certainly wish we had more time to talk about the important work you're leading at Morgan State University, but I'd welcome any additional thoughts you would like to share about what's next. How do we move from discussion to solutions?
Well, as we've talked about off camera, we would love if the Chamber would agree to partner with us in doing a virtual town hall meeting on tech transfer, to allow us in the HBCU community to share among ourselves what we're doing, but more importantly, share with the business community some of the capabilities that we have and what we've been doing sort of in the dark of night to bring that to light.
Well, on behalf of the Chamber and the Innovation Policy Center, I think it's something we definitely like to continue the discussion and take you up on. We'll look forward to continued partnership. Dr. May, you've been very generous with your time and your insights. We so appreciate all you've contributed to our nation and also your leadership continuing at Morgan State University. Thank you for making time to be part of today's event, sir, and we look forward to continuing this discussion.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again, Doctor, for that fascinating conversation. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the next panel. My colleague, Julie Stitzel, Chamber Vice President, will lead a discussion, Investing in Opportunity, a conversation with entrepreneurs and venture capital. Julie?
Thanks, Frank, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Julie Stitzel, Vice President for the Center of Capital Markets Competitiveness team at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And for the next 10 minutes, we are going to talk about how investments in minority-owned businesses leads to the equality of opportunity. So get ready to hear from two phenomenal entrepreneurs who wake up daily with the sole purpose of creating opportunity for others. Nicole Walters is an entrepreneur, a business strategist, CEO of Napnik, and an all-around force, which you will quickly pick up from our conversation today. As a former top-selling executive who quit her job in front of 10,000 people, she took what she knew about business and built a $1 million firm in a year. She's a mom, a wife, a passionate advocate for entrepreneurs, and has an impressive Instagram following. Marlon Evans is CEO of NextCubed, a company that empowers entrepreneurs to bring new technologies to market, helps rising companies scale, and provides paths to liquidity. NextCube's portfolio has over 70 companies with an aggregate value of $450 million, and over 50% of startups are led by female and minority founders. His professional career spans higher education, foundations, Fortune 500s, and startups, and he is driven by a desire to create positive social impact, which will undoubtedly shine through today. So thank you both for being here.
Of course, it's my joy to be here. Thanks for having us, Julie.
Thanks,
Julie. So let's get right to it. We only have 10 minutes, and I want everyone to hear from you. Over the last decade, U.S. VC investment has quadrupled. The number of businesses started by women has grown to 40%. And the growth, the number of minority entrepreneurs has grown as well. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen and experienced in your roles and what you think is actually driving this progress right now?
So I'll jump right in. I honestly think it's driven by the advent of social media. Social media has made entrepreneurship and building out your own business more accessible than ever. So what you're finding is that not only are people able to consume other people's innovations and entrepreneurial endeavors by seeing things like Shark Tank and The Profit on CNBC, but they're also able to access new opportunities and start tiptoeing into those entrepreneurial waters with less overhead. The margin of error to get into this space and the risk that's typically required has been greatly reduced because social media has become sort of this even playing ground to get your e-commerce business up and generate real revenue that lets you get into that playing field without the capital that was typically required.
Marlon, what are you seeing?
Yeah, no, I think similarly, just adding on to that, the cost of launching a business from a kind of a software perspective in terms of storage and the ability to go from an idea to having an application up in the App Store or Google Play has reduced significantly.
Yes.
And so if you're someone with a great idea, you can start testing that out more quickly than you could in the past.
Yeah.
And this conference is all about innovation. So have you seen an uptick in innovative output as a result of this progress and sort of entrepreneurial success that has resulted from it?
So what's interesting is I don't believe that I've seen, it's not like every day people are inventing the iPhone all over again, right? So innovation does happen, but what I found is more of a transfer of everyday ideas being pivoted so that they're better suited for an e-commerce world. So where somebody may have typically run a business on selling things like jam or hair bows and hauled their items down to the farmer's market, we're now finding them engaging using software tools like Shopify and Samcart to sell those items online. So what's happening is they're not worried as much about the things that are typically necessary to expand and scale, like using capital to get office space and inventory and warehouse, but they're getting rid of those things, pivoting their ideas, and in an innovative way, selling them and providing them online.
So I'm going to be a little bit of a wet blanket now because all of that's true. But despite those efforts, our data shows that Black business owners and minorities in general are struggling to access capital from the ventures. And Black-owned businesses are less than half as likely to get financing as white-owned firms and nearly 3 times more likely to have profits negatively impacted by a lack of capital. One way we know is to fix this to help fix the problem is to increase minority entrepreneurs' exposure to potential funding opportunities. This is something that we are actively pursuing and working on at the Chamber through our Equality of Opportunity initiative. But have you seen or found, so I'm going to ask a few questions here and we can start riffing. Have you seen other creative ways to make this happen? That's one. Are you seeing a shift in activity in the VC community to address this disparity to make sure that minority entrepreneurs are getting a fair shake? And then finally, what is missing from the equation now that would, strengthen the opportunity for minority entrepreneurs?
Sure, I'll jump in on this one. I think there are different models now that you're seeing popping up, and as it relates to something like we do at NextCube or with accelerators, where companies are able to kind of dive in early, get an understanding of how they can build their business before kind of going out and raising substantive capital is one area. Crowdfunding platforms is another area. I do think from a solution perspective, how the Chamber is approaching it in terms of making sure that entrepreneurs of color have access to the resources that they need to be successful is the starting point, and then also understanding how can we make sure that we are connecting those dots, because there's one thing for the resources to be there, but there's an awareness factor both on the investor side as well as the entrepreneur side to make sure that the best ideas are just not dying on the vine because they weren't getting the attention they deserved.
Absolutely.
I love this. I think Marlon, just to piggyback on that, you made such a great point that it isn't just about accessing the capital. And what's great with crowdfunding and Kickstarter and all these different platforms providing the revenue, it's that secondary piece. Why are these new opportunities not succeeding. And it isn't just the check mark of revenue, it's also education. You don't know what you don't know. So when I look at why people aren't winning, it's not just about the lack of revenue, it's about the lack of knowledge. Are they educated on what a profit and loss statement is? Do they understand how to read their balance sheet? Even if they're receiving these capitals and these fundings towards the best ideas, in order for them to have a real chance at success, they've got to understand how their business works, how to read that data, how to create projections, and get the support so that they can execute great stewardship over any capital that they receive so that they can have sustainable businesses.
And you know what I love about the combo of Nicole and Marlon is, Nicole, you focus on that partnership between the financing and the education. And Marlon, I feel like you are creating the sustainable ecosystem for these entrepreneurs so that it's not just a one and done, and you're building a network and allowing for this network to scale. And that's amazing. I'm looking at the clock and we don't have much more time. So I want to ask maybe one more question and we can weave in some final thoughts here. So in a minute or less, we've got folks who are tuning in from across the country. And if you could, please tell us the most significant action that you think the government or the private sector could take today to close the opportunity gap for minority-owned businesses and entrepreneurs.
I think it's so easy to think that gap is issuing checks or providing funds or being in a position to financially support innovation. The reality is it's more simple than that. It's providing Wi-Fi. It's making sure that internet access is in homes. It's creating equality amongst different school education systems so that way kids are being raised to even know that entrepreneurship is an opportunity. I think if we can fix some of those things on a fundamental level, we'll see the trickle down and the benefit on a greater scheme. You'll have people being able to play in this space and capital be used even better than before to have real successful minority-owned businesses that can help generational wealth and truly help our society.
Great. Marlon?
Yeah, no, I think Nicole hit right on the head, and it's providing that ongoing support throughout the entire entrepreneurial journey. And I was listening to Dr. May, who spoke before we dove in, and at Morgan State, we've launched an HBCU founders program that's incorporating not only capital, but technical resources, as well as human resources from some of our corporate partners like AT&T and Morgan Stanley that are giving up of their employees' time to serve as mentors and advisors to the student. So it's not a one size kind of fits all approach. It's really a multi-pronged effort, including, as you mentioned, government and the private sector.
Well, Nicole, Marlon, you guys are both doing fantastic work. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your insights and for your fierce dedication to supporting minority entrepreneurs in the country. And we are absolutely better because you joined us today. So thank you so much for being here. And I will turn it now over to my colleague, Rick Wade.
Listen, all I can say is wow, wow, wow. What an amazing afternoon. I think Suzanne Clark asked a question earlier. What makes you optimistic? Well, this conversation and dialogue that we've had this afternoon makes me really optimistic and hopeful that not only is about having conversation, but we're seeing real action around creating an economy that's more inclusive. And that begins with creating an economy that's innovative and making sure that people of color, that we can all work together to be the next generation of innovators and entrepreneurs to solve complex problems and to improve our society. You should know that today's event was just one of a many events that we'll be hosting, a series to discuss the importance of innovation to the equality of opportunity here in America. We're going to be working with the Chamber's Discover and Deliver campaign to advance private sector solutions to address the health gap in underrepresented communities. And I can't thank again, as I close out here, our Undersecretary and USPTO Director, Dr. Nku, for making an exciting announcement in providing the honor to Dr. Marion Rogers-Croak, the Innovators Card, and all of the work that they're doing. You can certainly find out more about what we can all do together by going to NCEAI's webpage and learn more about what he's doing to expand American innovation. Thank you to all of the panelists, the participants, for all of you for joining us in this journey to create a more inclusive economy and an economy where there's equality of opportunity in innovation. Thank you so much. I'm leaving here today having self-appointed myself as Master Innovator. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.